Good evening. It's nice to be here. I am like John. I'm going to use notes because my memory is horrible, and I have over-reliance on notes. But it's a pleasure to be here. As Julia said, I work for Xceleration. So what we do is reward and recognition. And I think I kind of tie in nicely with what Amy and John have talked about in terms of bringing it all together, using technology to do some of the things that drive both culture and employee appreciation and recognition, and create a sense of purpose and worthwhile work. I think when I was trying to come up with a topic for the talk tonight, I was thinking about how technology has impacted me from a professional standpoint in my field, and that naturally leads my mind to think about where I see gaps. And while it's easy to think about years past where you had to go to a manila folder and file employee paperwork in an old school folder, or fill out a job application via paper, those things seem like years past, right? I have a dashboard at my fingertips where I can see metrics on diversity and retention and compensation, and don't have to even look at a spreadsheet. I have a dashboard that pulls that data from all different sources for me, which is lovely. Makes my job a lot easier. But one, I think, area where I've seen gaps and until recently have felt that gap is that my recognition and reward programs have been largely ad hoc, relying on managers to write, albeit lovely, handwritten thank you notes and giving praise verbally. I've very rarely had that data in my dashboard to connect back to retention and performance and all the other metrics that I look at. So traditional reward and recognition programs, and I'll use that word intentionally because it's a word I hate. They're often programs and initiatives, have, I think some components that are great, right? There's the one-size-fits-all gift, company T-shirts, swag that serves its purpose, is good stuff. Verbal recognition. So again, a good thing, but I think we tend to maybe over-rely on that just a teensy bit. Traditional reward and recognition tends to focus on recognizing for very hard goals, things that are, from an obvious place, important to the health of your business, like sales metrics and deliverables and, things that keep your business alive. Again, very important, but not the full picture. They tend to be top-down only. So managers are giving the recognition, senior leadership is giving the recognition. And, last but not least, they're often done annually or on a quarterly basis, things that are not about catching people in the moment of doing something right, but about recognizing something that's pretty far in the past and often a distant memory for the employee who's being recognized for it. So you're not really getting at the behavioral component of reward and recognition to drive some of those business metrics that we're rewarding people ostensibly for. And then, even more importantly, they're often disconnected and scattered. We rely on multiple people to deliver reward and recognition, but we're not really tracking that in a consolidated and concerted way. I thought about all those carrots again and some of the problems, and one in that the over-reliance on verbal recognition. I read I think it was a World at Work white paper a while ago, and it was focused on the fact that about 40% of people really don't trust verbal recognition. They question the source. So if you're thinking about the fact that it's coming from top-down management and it's a formal recognition program that's corporate-driven, it's an initiative of some sort, someone else is getting a bonus for it. When people get verbal praise, they're like, what does that really mean? Or do I trust or like this person that's delivering it to me? So the other, I think, area of problem that I started to think about was that programs are often unbalanced. They're either very formal, again, on the corporate initiative side, or they're very informal. There's an expectation that we set that managers recognize employees or reward employees, but there's really no way to measure that. They're held accountable for something that's, again, pretty scattered. It's not connected to a system. You have no way to track that. You're not, again, linking all of your data back on your ROI. And, that can be an over-reliance on the other end with gifting or things, tangible rewards, without connecting any sort of verbal or written praise that links the behavior of the thing that you're trying to recognize to the gift that you're giving the employee. So again, kind of an imbalance on either side. So, I said that for the first time, I was talking to someone earlier, for the first time in my career, I had the pleasure of using technology to actually to fill this gap that I've seen in my own career. And this is not my dashboard. We're in the process of implementing our V8 onto our own internal reward system, but this is I think my personal page. But what we do really is we use technology to help companies manage reward and recognition programs. So I think that for me and for other HR professionals that I've encountered, I see using a system-based reward and recognition program as a way to hit really 4 main buckets or 4 main goals that I have. And one of the first ones is to be a better leader. And I think, John, you touched on this as well. And that, we have these expectations of managers to deliver on certain things. We don't really give them good tools to measure or to look at their teams. I was actually talking to one of our managers on the phone this morning, and he's an interesting gentleman, full of fun stories. And we were talking about some cultural, I guess a problem, I'll label it a problem, that we give the title of manager sometimes to people, and it's just a title. But he said, very true words, that being a manager is a job. Being a leader is a job. There are things that you have to fulfill. There are components of that you have to do that relate to people, and it's not just about the task. And I think it's easier. People often think that they praise more than they do, or they give recognition more than they do. Having a system gives you a place to see that. You can see how many, if you have a points-based system, you can see how many points you award to your employees, how many points other managers give your employees for their tasks or the things that they accomplish. And it makes it very visible. And like like driving a car, right? When you have a dashboard, it tells you how you're functioning, how you're doing. And reward and recognition it should work much the same way that our other HR metrics do. So, for this gentleman, ironically, he's someone that has an issue giving recognition and thinks that he does a better job than he does. And so being able to pull a report and look at exactly how many points he had given his employees in the last year and to be able to say, you know what, you're really one of our lower performing managers in terms of actually executing and practicing what we preach. So you have some hard facts and data to give to this manager to talk about his performance as a leader. To say, you think you do a good job and you do a lot of good things. Here's an area where the data clearly shows that you're not practicing what you preach. The second area that I think this kind of ties into a comment that Amy made earlier is that having a technology-based reward and recognition system really helps you to inspire a unique sense of purpose. And in the first world, right, we're dealing with automation and AI, and a lot of the menial tasks that we used to fill our day with are going away. And what people are looking for and have the opportunity to do more and more of is worthwhile work. Things that engage our intellect and our brain and less about checking off task lists, although some of those things are still, unfortunately, very, very needed in our world. But, I think connecting at the individual level is one of the challenges sometimes that managers and leaders face when they're delivering recognition to people. It becomes very personal, and you have to stop and think about what you're saying or what you're writing to someone. And that's not going to go away, right? But, using a combination where you can write a personal note, for example, to recognize someone for an accomplishment and then deliver points to them that they can then use to do something that means something to them, pays you back twice. So you're taking the time to deliver something via technology that is in writing, that someone can look back on again, they get a text message or they get a Slack notification that they've received recognition from their manager. They read it. They, then see how many points their manager or their coworker has given them that they can use to buy something. And, it can be, for some people, that's a tangible object. They like things. That's how we measure success. For some people, that's maybe a trip somewhere. We were actually on a leadership conference last summer in Charleston, and we were sitting around talking about the idea of travel as a perk, as an incentive to people. And what we walked away with from that conversation thinking was that an experience pays people back in a way that recharges them. So they come back to work feeling good, hopefully feeling relaxed if you can do the other part of your job as a leader and let them shut off while they're enjoying their trip. And, they tend to reinvest that energy back into work. They feel good about the place where they work. They feel good about their manager or their colleagues who've given them points to redeem on something that means something to them. So that unique sense of purpose can be accomplished, again, using a system to deliver something both in a message format and in a tangible gift, kind of balancing out that reward. So encouraging workplace connections is another area where I think technology really serves a purpose from a recognition standpoint. I mentioned that a lot of traditional, again, programs or incentives are top-down. Only certain people in the organization have the ability to really recognize or reward others. And I'll use us as an example. We have a program, quote unquote, that allows employees to recognize each other. So there's a peer recognition component. And that drives the message, the behavioral message, not just from the top, not just from the manager or leaders in the company, but from the people who work with you side by side, who say, I really appreciate you helping on that project, or I really appreciate you coming in early to take calls because I had an appointment that morning. And those connections are tying to the soft metrics, the behavioral metrics, that fuel those hard goals, those hard business goals. If your salespeople aren't engaged, they're not going to want to go out and sell and make more money just for you. They're not getting anything in return. Your managers, if they're not, engaged and tied into your culture, are not going to want to put in the extra effort to sit down and write a personal message to somebody at the end of a long day and put thought into it. People will go above and beyond to a certain point, but you need to have something that kind of fuels that helps push that lever. And those workplace connections, thinking about programs, I like to research our competitors a little bit as well. Harvard Business Review ran I think it was an article on Globoforce, which is another recognition company out there. And they looked at one of their clients, I think it's JetBlue, and they connected those workplace connections, reward and recognition, with retention. They saw, I think, a 3% increase in retention. So for every 10% that an employee said that they were recognized more than they had been the previous quarter, they saw a 3% increase in retention and 2% increase in engagement. So those don't seem like very big numbers. When you start to look at your entire population, though, and you think about the impact of people leaving the organization or disengaged employees, and I think we've all seen that Gallup statistic about the 34% that are engaged, I think it's 34% that are actively engaged, 17% that are actively disengaged, and that 47% that could go either in any of those buckets at any given time. So being able to, again, harness technology and encourage people to connect with other people, to keep them in your organization, to keep them engaged is pretty powerful. Adding a social recognition component, another client actually of Globoforce saw a 14% increase in their engagement when they added a social recognition. So tying it to Slack or whatever other internal channel of communication you use can drive those numbers up even further. And then the last thing that is, I think, really important for leadership, and ties at a very personal level for HR is creating a culture of genuine appreciation. One of our employees, she's incredible. She's got a great attitude. Her name's Kim Tracy. She's in our customer experience group in Atlanta. And she did a guest blog post a couple of, maybe 6 months ago, I think. And it struck me because she got at kind of the old school mentality where the expectation is that paying people is enough. Like, you get a paycheck, come to work, be happy, do your job, that's it. And she said, really, it's more than that, right? We should be saying thank you for all the little things that people do. The things that you take for granted that people do every day, they do them well, they execute on them. And she said, we really should have an attitude of gratitude about everything. Say thank you for everything, say thank you often, do it in a personal way. And if you can harness technology to do that, and you can see how often people are doing that, you can address and have conversations with people who aren't recognizing others, all of those things help crystallize that good behavior in your organization and drive performance, they drive your business metrics, they impact retention, they impact engagement. So having, again, a culture of genuine appreciation brings it all together. Thank you.